As soon as Lisa hypnotized Tom, he fell into a deep sleep. But the moment he was hypnotized, he began to see terrifying visions in which two people inside a house were brutally murdering a girl. Tom could clearly hear the girl's blood-curdling screams. Before he could make sense of anything, he was so terrified that he started gasping for breath and suddenly sat up with a jolt. Actually, Tom had come here to a party with his wife Maggie and sister-in-law Lisa, along with his friend Frank. Tom's sister-in-law Lisa was a hypnotist, but Tom and didn't believe in superstitions or things like ghosts at all. In front of everyone, he mocked Lisa and said that if such things were real, she should hypnotize him and prove it. Lisa couldn't tolerate being insulted. She accepted Tom's challenge head-on and hypnotized him. While under hypnosis, he saw a girl being murdered and woke up startled. After the hypnosis, Tom started feeling a bit unwell. He immediately returned home with Maggie, but even after lying down in bed, he couldn't sleep and his head was pounding with pain, so he went to the living room and sat down on the sofa to watch TV. But then he noticed a girl sitting next to him. The girl's entire body was blue. Reaching her hand out toward Tom, she said, "You can see me, can't you?" Tom jumped up in fear. But when he looked again, the girl had disappeared. Panicked, he ran toward his room, and just then he found his son Jake standing on the stairs. Tom asked, "Son, what are you doing here?" Jake gently stroked Tom's face and smiling said, "Daddy, you don't need to be afraid of her." Saying this, Jake went to his room. Tom was stunned by Jake's words because it seemed as if Jake also knew that Tom had just seen the shadow of that girl. The next morning, Tom told Maggie about the entire terrifying incident from the previous night, comforted him, saying that it was all just his imagination and that he should talk to Lisa about it. When Tom called Lisa and told her everything, she explained that Tom used to be a closed-minded person. He didn't believe in ghosts, supernatural things, or hypnosis. But during hypnosis, Lisa had instructed his mind to become open-minded, so now his mind had started believing in everything. That's why the scenes from horror movies stored in his memory, which his mind previously didn't accept as real, were now being accepted as real, and those scenes were bringing them up. There was nothing to be afraid of. Lisa's explanations didn't sit well with Tom, and he hung up the phone in annoyance. On Friday, Maggie and Tom planned to watch a football match, so Maggie was looking for a babysitter to take care of Jake in their absence. But Maggie couldn't find any babysitter. Just then, Jake suggested that she should call his friend Vanessa and ask her to send Debbie for babysitting. While dialing Vanessa's number, Maggie asked Jake who had told him about Debbie, and Jake mentioned the name Samantha. Maggie asked who Samantha was. Before Jake could answer, Vanessa picked up Maggie's call. Maggie got busy talking to Vanessa. On Friday night, when Debbie arrived at the house, Tom opened the door. The moment he saw Debbie, for a split second, everything appeared blood red before Tom's eyes. He was completely shocked, wondering what was happening to him. Just then, Debbie introduced herself and came inside. Maggie explained everything to her about taking care of Jake and gave her a baby monitor so that if Jake called out from his room, Debbie would hear him immediately. Afterwards, Tom and Maggie went out with their friends to watch a football match, but Tom's restlessness didn't go away. Whenever he saw a red light on the street, he would feel dizzy, and everything around him seemed to be drenched in a bloody red color. Meanwhile, at home, Debbie was sitting in the living room engrossed in reading a novel. Suddenly, Jake's voice came through the baby monitor. He was telling someone that his babysitter was sitting downstairs. Hearing Jake talk, Debbie immediately went to his room. When she asked him who he was talking to, Jake mentioned Samantha's name. Hearing the name Samantha, Debbie's face turned pale. In a trembling voice, she asked Jake when he had talked to Samantha, and Jake innocently replied that he talks to her every day. Hearing this, Debbie panicked and immediately ran away from there with Jake. On the other hand, Tom suddenly had a vision of Debbie running away from the house with Jake. He frantically rushed home. Maggie, also alarmed, ran after him. When Tom reached home, Debbie and Jake were indeed not there. Tom started searching for them and headed towards the street. Whenever his eyes fell on red lights, he kept feeling that he needed to go to Kishore, as if some force was guiding him along the way. Eventually, he reached the local station where Debbie was standing at the ticket counter. Tom rushed over, grabbed Jake into his arms, and lashed out at Debbie. As the commotion at the station grew, a police officer present there immediately came over to them. Maggie told the police that Debbie had tried to kidnap their son, Jake. Before the police could arrest her, a woman came out from behind the ticket counter and started defending Debbie. She said that she was Debbie's mother and that this is what she does. Debbie had brought Jake to meet her. She further revealed that her elder daughter, Samantha, had mysteriously disappeared 6 months ago and there has been no trace of her to this day. Showing a picture of Samantha, Debbie shouted that Jake had told her he talks to Samantha every day in his house. She asked the police officer to question Tom and Maggie about Samantha. When the officer questioned them about Samantha, Tom and Maggie flatly denied everything. They said they had never even seen her. The police asked Tom and Maggie if they wanted to file a case against Debbie. Tom flatly refused to file a complaint. Somehow he convinced Maggie to leave the place with him. On the way, Tom made a terrifying revelation. He said that the girl in the photo Debbie had shown was the same one he had seen sitting on the sofa. Tom asked Maggie how she had found out about Debbie. Maggie tried to remember and said that when she was looking for a babysitter, Jake had suggested Debbie's name to her and also mentioned that Samantha had told him about Debbie. As soon as Maggie remembered this, she felt the ground slip from under her feet. After coming home, Tom and Maggie started questioning Jake. Jake simply said that if he told the truth, Mom would get very scared, so he didn't want to talk about it. That night, Tom sat alone on the sofa, staring for a long time at the same spot where he had seen Samantha, hoping that maybe she would appear again, but she didn't. A few days later, the people in the neighborhood gathered and threw a party. During this time, Tom questioned his landlord Harry and Harry's son Cars about Samantha, but they repeated the same thing, that Samantha had suddenly disappeared 6 months ago. Tom tried to find out whether Samantha had ever lived in the house where he was now staying, but Harry flatly denied it. He said that Tom was the first tenant of that house and that no one had lived there before him. Meanwhile, Maggie was pouring her heart out to her sister Liza. She anxiously shared that Tom had stopped going to work and would sit on the sofa for hours, just hoping that he would see that girl again. Maggie also mentioned that Jake and Tom would talk about all sorts of things between themselves and keep talking like that. But as soon as she enters the room, both of them fall completely silent. She was starting to feel that something very strange was going on, something she couldn't quite understand. The next morning, Tom woke up early. After getting ready, as soon as he went downstairs to the drawing room, he saw Frank standing there, his face filled with anxiety and sadness. Tom asked in surprise, "Frank, what are you doing here?" In a trembling voice, Frank said, "They will kill you, and Maggie too." Saying just that, he left without another word and went straight outside to sit on the stairs. Tom was left stunned. He couldn't understand who Frank was talking about. Seeing this anxiety, Tom decided that he would go and talk to his wife Sheila about it. But as soon as he reached Frank's house, he saw that Frank's son Adam was standing there with a gun in his hand. The very next moment, Adam shot himself. Suddenly, Tom's eyes opened. He had been dreaming. As soon as he woke up, he rushed downstairs in a panic. This time, Frank was not in the drawing room, but the dream had shaken Tom so deeply that to reassure himself, he headed straight to Frank's house. Just then, he heard the sound of a gunshot coming from Frank's house. Tom broke the window and went inside and saw Adam had actually shot himself. Tom immediately tried to help him and called an ambulance. Within moments, the ambulance arrived and took Adam away. Seeing the condition of their son, Frank and Sheila were devastated and wept uncontrollably. Witnessing this sorrowful atmosphere, Maggie decided to take Jake outside for a while. As they were passing by the cemetery, Jake suddenly heard some music and went inside. There, a police officer was being given a final farewell. Just then, a police officer standing in the crowd noticed Jake. Maggie quickly reached there and took Jake toward the other side of the cemetery. But that police officer also followed them. Looking at Maggie, he said, "This child has a unique power. He can see things that ordinary people cannot." Then he looked deeply into Maggie's eyes and realized that she did not possess this power. This clearly meant that Jake had inherited this ability from his father, Tom. The officer handed his card to Maggie and told her to send Tom to meet him that night so he could teach him some things related to this power. As he left, the officer said goodbye to Jake. In response, Jake said, "Bye, Neil." Hearing this, Maggie was stunned because until then, the officer had never mentioned his name. That night, Maggie made up an excuse to go watch a movie and set out to meet Neil. As a precaution, she put a knife in her purse. Following the address on the card, she arrived at a deserted alley in front of a closed door. When she knocked, Neil came out, but when he saw Maggie standing there, he became furious. "You shouldn't have come here. I told you to send your husband. Why did you come yourself?" he scolded her. However, she explained that Tom was very frightened by the things happening to him and would never come here. But Maggie was worried about him because his madness was only getting worse. She pleaded with Neil to suggest some solution. Neil understood Maggie's predicament and asked when all this had started happening to Tom. Maggie explained that it all started after the hypnotism. Neil clarified that Tom's dormant abilities had awakened. He could now hear and sense spirits and supernatural forces. The girl Tom was talking to was an extra spirit, and that spirit had a desire. The spirit's wish had to be fulfilled. Otherwise, the longer it took, the angrier she would become, and the more trouble would follow. Hearing this, Maggie became worried and returned home. Meanwhile, Tom was sitting in his music library at home, listening to music. Suddenly, he began to feel an intense cold all around him. In an instant, the scene around him changed. The house looked exactly as it would during renovation work. The walls and furniture were covered with plastic sheets. Just then, Tom saw something directly in front of him. He saw a figure slowly walking toward him. Tom's feet also began moving toward it on their own. When they came very close, both reached out their hands to each other. As soon as they did this, Tom's face turned pale and he began to struggle for breath. Just then, Maggie arrived. Seeing Tom standing there with his hand outstretched and holding his breath, Maggie immediately realized that he had fallen into the grip of some supernatural entity. She quickly ran over, grabbed his face, and shook him hard while shouting, "Breathe, Tom. Come to your senses. Tom snapped back to consciousness with a jolt and, stumbling badly, collapsed to the ground. In a trembling voice, he said, "This is the similarity. Right here in this house after I recover a little." Tom reached Leja's house. He said to Leja, "I want you to hypnotize me again. Get me out of this madness." To help Tom, Lisa began to hypnotize him once more. Just like last time, she asked Tom to imagine a completely empty and dark theater. But this time, when he did so, Tom saw a girl sitting there as if he had placed his hand on her shoulder. Suddenly, another girl appeared from the other side. Her face was wrapped in plastic. She attacked Tom. In self-defense, when Tom pulled off the plastic, he saw the same face, Kataravna's, with her front teeth broken. Just then, Tom's eyes fell on the screen in front of him. On it was written, "Dig." Tom's eyes snapped open. He told Lisa that he needed to dig. Saying this, he returned home. The next day, when Maggie came back from work, she saw Tom and Jake digging in the garden. When Maggie asked the reason for this strange behavior, Tom simply replied that he needed to dig. Even after Maggie repeatedly questioned him, an argument broke out between them, and in anger, Maggie went inside the house. Tom followed her in, trying to console her. Just then, the phone rang. It was Maggie's brother Steve on the line. He informed them that their grandmother had passed away. Upon hearing this news, Maggie hugged Tom and began to cry. She told Tom that they needed to leave immediately for the funeral, but Tom replied that he was busy with the digging and wouldn't be able to go with her. Hearing this, Maggie was deeply hurt and left for home alone with Jake. After they left, Tom didn't stop. He continued with his digging. Meanwhile, the water supply and the tap stopped coming. Tom went down to the basement of the house. There, he opened the water valve, and that's when his eyes fell on the basement floor. Like a madman, he started digging there as well. The noise from the drilling machine was so loud that the entire neighborhood could hear it. By now, he had already dug up a large part of the floor. Suddenly, while striking hard, his axe hit the wall instead of the floor. The impact made the bricks in the wall shake, making Tom realize there was an empty space behind it. He immediately began breaking and removing the bricks. Just then, he saw something wrapped in plastic inside. As he started to unwrap the plastic, he removed the plastic and saw a red coat inside. As soon as Tom removed the coat, his eyes widened in shock. There lay Samantha's dried-up corpse. Somehow, Tom mustered the courage to grab the hand of the dried corpse, and the moment he touched it, he felt a jolt and began to see glimpses of the horrific incident that had happened to Samantha. Tom saw her leaving her house and going somewhere alone. She looked extremely innocent and naive. Just then, someone called out to her. That someone was none other than Harry, Tom's landlord's son. He was standing at the door of the Joshi house where Tom was currently living. At that time, the house was not fully finished and no one else was there yet. Harry called out to Samantha and invited her inside. Innocent Samantha, despite her hesitation, went in. Frank's son Adam was also present there. Both Harry and Adam were completely drunk. Samantha sensed that their intentions were not good, so she started to leave, but Harry stopped her and began to force himself on her. As Samantha tried to resist, she started screaming and shouting. To silence her, Harry told Adam to find something. In his drunken state, Adam couldn't think of anything else, so he hurriedly brought a plastic sheet. Together, they pressed the plastic tightly over Samantha's mouth and face. Samantha began to suffocate and died a painful death right there. But as she was dying, some of Harry's hair got stuck. Tom's eyes snapped open. Samantha had shown him the truth she wanted him to see. The madness clouding Tom's mind had now completely lifted, and he was fully in his senses. He came out of the basement and headed straight towards Frank's house. But Tom had no idea that Harry had seen everything from outside and from the shed. Harry now knew that Tom had dug in the basement and perhaps he had now also found Samantha's body. Meanwhile, Tom reached Frank's house. Tom told Frank that he now knew why Adam had shot himself. He asked Frank to come to his house so he could show him the truth. Hearing this, Frank went inside and after a few moments, got ready and left with Tom for his house. Taking him to the basement, Tom showed Frank Samantha's body. The horrifying sight left Frank stunned. In a panic, he asked how the body ended up there. But Tom avoided the question and said directly that Samantha was not killed by anyone else but by Kurt. Madam did it. Frank, almost shouting, asked how Tom could be so sure and what evidence he had. Tom explained that there were strands of the killer's hair clenched in Samantha's fist and that this would prove who the real culprit was. Tom insisted that they should tell the police the whole truth without any delay. Hearing this, the color drained from Frank's face and he broke down completely. He revealed that after the incident, both boys had come to him and Harry and confessed the truth. To save their children from going to jail, Frank and Harry did not. They had the body of Samantha buried in Harry's house. After saying this, Frank took a gun out of his pocket. Suddenly, he broke down and started sobbing uncontrollably. Through his tears, he said that he had been carrying the heavy burden of this secret for the past 6 months. It was because of this remorse that his son Adam had tried to commit suicide. Frank, too, could no longer bear the weight of this guilt. He told Tom to leave. Seeing the gravity of the situation, Tom also thought it best to get out of there. As soon as he climbed the basement stairs and came up, the sound of a gunshot echoed from below. Tom understood that Frank had ended his own life. Tom hadn't even recovered from this shock when there was a loud knock at the door. When Tom opened the door, the landlord Harry and his son Court were standing there. Both of them barged into the house by force. Court had already told Harry about Tom knowing the secret of the identical murder. Tom tried to turn and run, but Court struck him hard, causing him to collapse unconscious on the ground. Harry was about to shoot Tom when suddenly the loud sound of a car horn echoed from outside. Hearing the car, Harry and Court began turning off the lights in the house so that whoever was outside would think no one was home. But the person outside was none other than Maggie. She was worried about Tom, so she had come back to take him with her to the funeral. But seeing the lights go out in the house, Maggie sensed that something was wrong. For her own safety, she immediately took a knife out of her bag. As she stepped inside the house, she saw darkness all around. As soon as Maggie turned on the floor lamp for some light, Harry, who was lying in wait in the dark, lunged at her, threw her to the ground and pointed a gun at her to shoot. But before Harry could pull the trigger, Maggie stabbed the knife she was holding with all her strength into Harry's leg. Meanwhile, Tom had also regained consciousness. But Kurt had pinned him to the ground. Tom turned around and punched him, freeing himself. Kurt tried to attack Tom with an iron rod, but just then, gunshots rang out one after another. Harry and his son Kurt were riddled with bullets and finished off. When Tom turned around, he saw Frank standing there. In fact, Frank had not shot himself in the basement. He had killed Harry and Kurt to save Tom and Maggie. Looking at Tom, Frank said, "They were going to kill you and Maggie, Tom, but I couldn't let that happen." Saying this, Frank went outside and sat down. He was now ready to face his punishment. One mistake by Kurt had ruined many lives. Tom and Maggie also came outside, and just then Tom saw Samantha on the road, who now looked happy. She put on her coat and walked away peacefully on her own path. After going a little distance, she disappeared from sight. She had finally found her release. After all this, Samantha's funeral was held with full honors. A few days later, Tom and left that colony and set out to move into a new house. On the way, Jake could hear voices coming from the houses they passed. Perhaps there were other restless souls who needed release, and they too wanted Jake's help, just like Samantha did. So I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Short Flicks, for more such amazing film stories. We'll meet again with another fantastic story. Until then, thank you.